This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in the Inland Empire. Today we are joined by Mike Gardner. He is a member of the Riverside City Council. He's announced his intention to run for the Board of Supervisors in Riverside County. So speaking about homeless would be appropriate given what you do now and what you may do in the future.
Indeed.
I want to speak about the homeless crisis we face. We know that California is now the homeless capital of America. We have 21% of the homeless population, but yet only 12% of the overall U.S. population. LA County is particularly bad. How is it in Riverside City and County?
We have a significant number, there's no question, and I think California may have a larger proportion because of our climate.
I agree.
You can live through the winter.
No doubt.
There are a number of things that drive people being on the streets in California. One is some of the changes in state law with incarcerating people has put some people on the street who would previously have been incarcerated. And even if they have seen the light and want to turn around and do well and be a productive member of society, it's very difficult to get a job if you're a convicted criminal,
and it's
especially a felon.
Right, and you say that when we consider that when Prop 47 passed, which was part of the criminal reform measures that we put in place, as well as AB 109, also part of criminal justice reform, the intent was to have funding to help those folks reintegrate. And the funding's been a little slow going. We're supposed to get some this year, but it's been tricky.
That's always an issue, and the state has its own financial problems, and has retained money to deal with their issues that local government thought was coming their way.
Although you do know that last year the state Senate worked on rejiggering Prop 63 money. And there is money now for permanent housing for the mentally ill folks living on the street. That's a net plus, but we're still trying to grapple with a funding crisis in the homeless services sector.
Indeed, and in Riverside we are looking at, we've just recently changed the city's policy from one of providing shelter and services as needed for mental health or substance abuse, and then you find somebody housing to the housing first model.
Which is a model that I think has become most popular throughout the country. And as I understand it, we don't, once someone comes and presents as homeless, we're not going to say, are you sober? We're going to try to get him in. We'll help him get sober.
Yes.
And then we'll present.
And it's part of the housing. You get housing, but you also get whatever services you may need. If you need substance abuse counseling and treatment, you get that. If you need mental health counseling and treatment, you get that. If you need job training, all those things.
Here's a question though, because at a certain level, there are some communities that are saying, we need to address this issue locally. We're seeking help from Sacramento, but there's only so much they can do. So for example, the city of Los Angeles in November passed a bond for homeless services. The county of Los Angeles is floating a bond for homeless services. Is it time for the city of Riverside to jump in? Because in LA, they're going to be building housing through that bond. And then they're going to the county with their bond for the services. Should Riverside City and County merge those two goals together?
We may end up doing that. Certainly one of the city of Riverside's goals, and the county is very cooperative, as I think it should be, is to treat this as a regional problem. It's not just any one city, it's not just the counties. It's all of us together. And one of the issues that we face is Riverside being the county seat and having had homeless services for a period of time tends to get homeless from surrounding communities who come to Riverside. Some get brought and dumped. Some come on their own. And some are here because they need to report to an entity that is here.
But part of the challenge for a city, for example, is that cities really don't provide homeless services. That's a county function. Am I right?
Under the law and the funding, yes. And so, Riverside, we have stepped up a bit, and we are currently providing with, it's largely federal pass-through funding, but the city is providing, as opposed to the county, the emergency shelter
see.
is funded by the city.
But that's an example of what the city can do. They
Right.
have the housing element. They can build housing.
Right.
But it's really the county that provides those wraparound services. Although, are you now doing that? Is the model changing?
We're beginning to provide
Okay.
some of it, and we're looking at adding staff that will be trained to provide some of the substance abuse and the mental health counseling.
I want to ask you about federal funding, because we know that California as a state receives about $105 billion in federal funding a year.
Right.
A lot of that's for healthcare and otherwise. But with the new administration in Washington talking about slashing the size of federal government, if you consider that California's already taken an aggressive posture vis-a-vis the Trump administration, are you concerned that federal funds will decrease or dry up?
I think there's a possibility of that. Obviously, we have to wait and see what actually happens.
Right.
There is a great deal of talk, and you can speculate how things will happen all day long. But it would certainly be a blow to California and California programs if federal funding in those areas were reduced.
What can a city do? Should a city do something to prepare for that possibility?
In Riverside's case, we've not actually sat down and said, if we had this much reduction, we would do this, that much reduction, we would do the other thing. It's a little bit more of a wait and see attitude. I'm hopeful that we won't see significant cuts. I just don't know whether we will or not. Riverside's in kind of a unique position because our voters passed a 1-cent sales tax increase.
Can we talk about Measure Z? Because it was pretty remarkable that the city of Riverside's voters passed a sales tax increase.
I was very pleased by it, and it's a general sales tax increase.
You needed 50 plus
we
1.
need 50 plus 1. We got not quite 60, which
bad.
is what the initial polling indicated that it would be.
Not bad.
But in the information phase of the campaign,
Right.
The city indicated that an increase of homeless services was one of the things the council was thinking of doing.
Okay.
With that revenue, which is about $50 million a year.
That's significant. And
It
it was a
is.
1-cent increase, correct?
Full cent, yes.
That's a lot. I mean, usually you'll see a quarter-cent, a half-cent. Now, we are seeing a decrease of a quarter-cent because the state sales tax decreased with the expiration of that part of Prop 30.
Right.
And so money starts coming in April, I understand.
April 1st is when the tax takes effect. We'll start to actually see it in the city coffers 30 to 45 days later.
And then what? I mean, that's a lot. I mean, 5 million, 50 million a
50
year.
million a year.
That's about what, 5.5 million a month?
Yes, it is a lot of money.
Yeah.
The city is doing two things to help guide how we do that. One is the council is having a strategy session to talk only about how should we spend Measure Z money. No final decisions will be made, then it begins a discussion process. We're also appointing a budget engagement commission, 18 members, 2 from each of the 7 wards and 4 at large. Of those members, 1 from each ward is a resident, 1 is a business owner.
I'd love for you to come back. I want to hear what that commission recommends, because it really is an example of citizen
pleased to do
democracy.
that.
His name is Mike Gardner. He is a member of the Riverside City Council. I'm Brad Pomerance in the Inland Empire, Local Edition.